Have you ever found yourself sitting quietly at your kitchen table long after the sun has gone down, staring blankly at a crisp white piece of paper that just cost you $800? Maybe there is a heavy, bitter, unnatural smell of a synthetic chemical pesticide still lingering in the air of your hallway, making your chest feel just a little bit tight with every breath you take. You paid that man in the freshly pressed uniform to come right into your home, spray his expensive, mysterious concoctions along your baseboards, and look you right in the eye to promise that your pest problems were finally over. You trusted him because he wore an official-looking badge on his shirt and carried an impressive heavy metal sprayer. But then, not even a full month later, you wake up suddenly at 2 o'clock in the morning. The house is completely silent, but your skin is crawling. Your heart starts pounding in your chest. You reach over to turn on the bedside lamp, and there it is. You find a fresh, red, swelling bite on your arm. The bedbugs are back. Or perhaps it is not bedbugs for you. Maybe it is the relentless trail of tiny black ants, marching right back across your kitchen counter, ignoring the chemicals entirely, or the heavy, sickening scuttle of cockroaches diving under the refrigerator the absolute second you flip on the overhead light. You paid a small fortune out of your hard-earned savings. You unwittingly exposed your family, your growing children, and your beloved dogs to harsh, mysterious laboratory chemicals that you cannot even pronounce, and the bugs are still right there living in your home. It is enough to make your blood boil, is it not? You work entirely too hard for your money, and you absolutely deserve a home that feels safe, clean, and peaceful without having to take out a loan just to maintain it. Today, I'm going to give you the honest, unvarnished truth about an ancient natural powder that kills absolutely any bug that dares to walk across it. And I'm going to tell you exactly why the modern pest control companies pretend it simply does not exist. I'm going to tell you about a humble substance that has been quietly, efficiently, and permanently destroying crawling insects since long before human beings even learned how to build a fire. Furthermore, I'm going to explain exactly why the modern pest management industry, a massive, faceless corporate machine that grinds out $16 billion in revenue every single year in the United States alone, is praying every single day that you never learn the name of this simple, natural dirt. That costs roughly $4 for a standard bag. You see, we have been sold a remarkably expensive, very toxic lie for the better part of the last century. Over the last few decades, through slick television commercials and glossy magazine advertisements, we have been slowly conditioned to believe that the only possible way to keep our homes safe and clean is to rely entirely on giant corporations and their sterile laboratories. They desperately want us dependent. They want you treating your own house, the home you bought and paid for, like it is a property you are just renting from them, where you feel obligated to pay a monthly subscription fee just to live your life without fleas, ticks, mites, and roaches. They want you trapped on a never-ending chemical treadmill, writing a check month after month, season after season, year after year. In my community, we simply do not work that way. We believe in being fiercely self-reliant. We believe in looking carefully at what the good earth has already provided for us before we ever reach for a brightly colored plastic jug full of synthetic neurotoxins. Our grandparents, the resilient, calloused-handed folks who built their homesteads and cleared their fields with their own 2 hands and sheer willpower, they knew how to handle pests without signing a 12-month service contract. They lived by one very simple, unbreakable rule: do not waste absolutely anything. Do not waste your harvest. Do not waste your hard-earned money. Do not waste your precious time, and certainly do not waste your family's health on false corporate promises. The honest truth is, there is a permanent solution sitting right out there in the open. It is not a miracle. I want to be very clear about that right now. I do not believe in magic cures or miracles when it comes to managing a homestead or controlling a pest population. I believe in straightforward biology, practical physics, and nature working exactly as it was designed to work from the very beginning. This ancient powder leaves absolutely no chemical residue whatsoever behind in your home or your garden soil. Insects cannot ever build a genetic resistance to it, no matter how many hundreds of generations manage to pass. You could literally eat a spoonful of it without coming to the slightest bit of harm. But the man in the clean uniform is never, ever going to hand you a bag of it, because if he permanently solved your ant or roach problem for $4 today, he would never be able to charge you $400 to $1,200 on a recurring annual contract tomorrow. Stick with me through this video, because we're going to look right past their slick marketing campaigns, right past their empty guarantees, and get our hands dirty with the real, honest truth. Let us pull back the heavy curtain on how this industry actually operates behind closed doors. When that friendly pest control salesman knocks on your front door with his clipboard, he is not actually selling you a pest-free home. He is selling you a subscription. He is selling you a secure spot on their corporate balance sheet. The entire business model of these massive chemical conglomerates relies completely on your pest problem returning. I want you to think about it sensibly for just a moment. If they came into your house and permanently eliminated every single roach, every trailing ant, every silverfish, and every single bedbug on your property. With just one single visit, they would all go entirely out of business by the end of the calendar year. So instead of a permanent fix, they apply synthetic chemical treatments that are specifically engineered and formulated to break down over a short period of time. Sunlight degrades the chemicals naturally. The rain washes them right away from your foundation. The ambient moisture in the air dilutes them. And eventually, right on schedule, the bugs return. Then you make an anxious phone call, you get another chemical treatment, and you receive another heavy invoice in the mail. The average American homeowner is spending anywhere from $300 to well over $500 every single year just to maintain this absolute illusion of control. It is a brilliant business system, but it is a system designed from the ground up to keep you helpless, reaching for your wallet every single time the seasons change. But it does not have to be this way for you anymore. The folks who came before us, the generations who carved out a decent life from the hard soil without the electrical grid, without monthly exterminator contracts, and without massive chemical conglomerates holding their hands at every turn, they knew better. They understood deeply that the earth often provides exactly what we need, if we just have the patience, the respect, and the wisdom to look for it. The true, lasting solution to your worst pest problem is not being cooked up in a corporate laboratory in some distant city. It has been sitting right beneath our feet, waiting patiently for us for roughly 30 million years. It comes in a plain, heavy paper bag from your local farm supply or feed store, and it is called Diatomaceous earth. Now, I want to slow down and break down exactly what that name means, because I firmly believe you should understand the biology and the science of whatever you are bringing into your home or putting onto your soil. Diatomaceous earth is not a manufactured chemical compound. It is a completely natural, soft, crumbly, sedimentary rock. The remarkable story of this powder starts at the very bottom of ancient, prehistoric lakes and deep, long-gone oceans. Millions upon millions of years ago, these vast bodies of water were filled with a specific type of microscopic, single-celled algae called diatoms. These little aquatic organisms were entirely unique because they grew protective shells made out of pure silica, which is essentially the exact same thing as natural glass. Over hundreds of millions of years, countless billions of generations of these tiny diatoms lived out their short lives, died, and slowly drifted down to the dark bottom of the water. Their microscopic glass shells piled up, layer upon layer upon layer, accumulating in massive beds that were thousands of feet deep. Over the great spans of time, the oceans slowly receded, the prehistoric lakes dried up completely, and those massive deep beds of fossilized glass shells were compressed by the weight of the earth into soft, chalky white rock. Today, we simply locate those dry, ancient lake beds, mine that soft rock straight from the earth, and grind it down into a very fine white powder. If you were to walk into a farm store, open a fresh bag of diatomaceous earth right now, and rub a small pinch of it between your thumb and your index finger, it would feel incredibly soft, almost exactly like baking flour or fine talcum powder. It is completely harmless and gentle to your human touch. But this is exactly where the biology gets fascinating, and this is why it works so perfectly. You have to zoom in. You have to change your perspective and look at this soft powder from the microscopic perspective of a creeping insect. If you were to take a single tiny speck of diatomaceous earth and put it under a very powerful laboratory microscope, the picture changes entirely. You will not see a smooth, gentle powder at all. You will see thousands of jagged, broken, razor-sharp fragments of fossilized glass. To a foraging carpenter ant, a hungry bedbug looking for a warm meal in the dark, or a dirty cockroach hiding deep in your wall voids, crawling across a light dusting of diatomaceous earth is exactly like a human being trying to crawl bare-skinned across a wide field of shattered window glass. You see, an insect relies entirely on its outer exoskeleton to survive in this world, and specifically, it relies heavily on a very thin, delicate, waxy protective outer layer covering that shell. That microscopic waxy coating is the only thing keeping the essential moisture locked safely inside their tiny bodies. Without that wax layer, they would dry up and die in a matter of hours. When an insect walks through a field of diatomaceous earth, those microscopic razor-sharp glass fossil shells physically slice right through that protective waxy layer. They tear it to absolute shreds. Furthermore, the silica powder is incredibly porous, acting exactly like a dry sponge, aggressively absorbing the essential protective fats and oils straight out of the insect's cuticle. They do not get poisoned. Their tiny nervous systems do not get artificially paralyzed by some synthetic laboratory neurotoxin. They simply dehydrate. They lose their internal water at a catastrophic rate that their biology simply cannot survive, and they dry out completely until they are entirely dead. And this specific mechanism brings us to the absolute most important point of all. This is the exact reason why the multi-billion-dollar pest control industry deeply fears this simple white powder. Insects can never, ever develop a resistance to it. When you use conventional chemical sprays, you're attacking very specific, complex biological pathways inside the insect. Because insects reproduce so incredibly quickly, churning out thousands of offspring, within just a few short generations, a handful of survivors will naturally mutate, adapt, and become completely immune to whatever incredibly expensive poison you just sprayed on your baseboards. That is the chemical treadmill. That is why the commercial chemicals constantly have to get stronger, harsher, more expensive, and far more toxic to your own family just to keep working. But Diatomaceous earth is a strictly physical, strictly mechanical killer. You simply cannot evolve around a razor blade. The fundamental laws of physics do not negotiate with pests. No matter how many millions of years pass by, a soft-bodied insect is never ever going to evolve a biological way to walk across microscopic broken glass without getting severely cut. This simple, undeniable mechanical truth is what makes it a permanent, foolproof solution for everything from soft garden aphids and destructive caterpillars to the most stubborn, highly chemical-resistant strains of bedbugs, currently plaguing major cities all across North America. Now, if you have ever watched my videos before, you know exactly what time it is right now. I am tapping my knuckles on the wooden table because it is time for the safety word. I am a father and a grandfather, and I will never, ever hand you a homesteading solution, no matter how natural or traditional it might be, without stopping to tell you exactly how to protect yourself, your family, your children, and your hardworking animals. We do not cut corners on safety on this channel, and we certainly do not take foolish, unnecessary risks just to save a few pennies. The absolute mandatory safety word for today is food grade. This is completely critical. And I need you to pause and hear me very clearly on this specific point before you go out and buy anything at all. If you walk blindly into a massive big box hardware store and you just grab the very first heavy bag that says Diatomaceous earth on the label without reading the fine print, you might be making a terrible, dangerous mistake. You see, there are two very fundamentally different types of this powder being manufactured and sold today. One type is strictly meant for heavy industrial use, specifically engineered for swimming pool water filtration systems. That specific pool-grade powder has been taken from the earth and superheated in a massive industrial kiln to incredibly high temperatures. That intense, unnatural heat chemically alters the natural silica, crystallizing it and turning it into a very different form that is highly dangerous and severely damaging if you, your children, or your animals happen to breathe it deeply into your lungs. Do not ever, under any circumstances whatsoever, bring industrial pool-grade Diatomaceous earth into your living room, your chicken coop, or anywhere near your vegetable garden. You must look directly at the front of the bag and ensure it proudly says food grade in clear, unmistakable letters. Food grade means the powder is completely unheated, structurally pure, mechanically unaltered, and left exactly as the good Lord in nature made it. It is so profoundly safe that agricultural folks and cattle ranchers have been mixing it directly into their bulk livestock feed for many decades, just to keep the giant farm grain bins clear of destructive beetles and hungry weevils. It is completely safe to use around your curious dogs, your indoor roaming cats, your crawling children, and your laying hens. But that brings me directly to my second strict rule of personal safety. Even though food-grade Diatomaceous earth is a wonderful natural product, and even though studies by agricultural universities have proven it is completely non-toxic to mammals, you still need to use your good, old-fashioned common sense. It is an incredibly fine, very dry dust. You simply do not want to be breathing in heavy, thick clouds of any fine dust. Whether it is natural dirt blowing off a dry summer field or fossilized silica from ancient lakes, because it will naturally irritate the soft tissues of your lungs. If you are actively treating a very large enclosed area, like thoroughly blowing dust into the inside of a deep wall void during a renovation, or spreading it extensively behind all of your heavy kitchen appliances, just do the smart thing and put on a simple paper dust mask. It is not an intense emergency protocol. You do not need a hazardous material suit. It is just a basic practical comfort measure to keep your airways perfectly clear while the fine dust is temporarily suspended in the air around you. Once the powder settles quietly onto the floorboards and surfaces, the inhalation risk is entirely gone. But while you are actively puffing it around and stirring up the air, protect your lungs. Now, I promised you the absolute honest truth when we started this conversation, and the honest truth means looking you in the eye and telling you exactly what this powder cannot do. I'm not a slick corporate salesman desperately trying to meet a monthly sales quota, so I will never sit here and pretend my traditional methods are pure magic that solve every problem instantly. This ancient powder has one major, undeniable weakness, and that relentless enemy is moisture. If your layer of diatomaceous earth gets heavily wet, it becomes essentially inert and completely useless for killing bugs. The water causes those microscopic, razor-sharp glass shards to clump tightly together, entirely dulling their cutting edges and filling in the porous spaces that absorb the insect's oils. If you spread it out beautifully in your raised vegetable beds to stop the creeping slugs, the earwigs, and the spider mites, and then it rains heavily that afternoon, or even if there is just a very thick, heavy morning dew the next day, you are going to have to go right back out there and reapply a fresh layer once the soil is perfectly dry again. Indoors, inside your completely dry wall cavities, tucked under your dry wooden floorboards, or dusted lightly inside the back of your dry pantry shelves, it will sit there quietly and remain a highly lethal barrier for many months, potentially even years. But outside in the elements, you have to work closely in harmony with the weather patterns. The other completely honest limitation you must understand before you start is that this mechanical powder cannot physically penetrate or kill unhatched insect eggs. It is a physical trap designed for moving targets, not a penetrating fumigation gas. It only kills the active, crawling insects that physically walk through it. If you're dealing with a severe, deeply entrenched infestation of biting fleas hiding deep in your thick carpets, or chemical-resistant bed bugs multiplying inside your wooden bed frames, you absolutely have to be patient. You lay the fine, invisible powder down carefully, and you wait. You let the current generation of adult insects walk through it, get cut, and dehydrate. Then you must leave that exact same powder right where it is, completely undisturbed, so that when those hundreds of hidden eggs finally hatch a week or two later, the brand new generation of hungry nymphs crawls right out of their hiding spots and directly into that exact same lethal field of microscopic glass. It is definitely not an instant overnight chemical bomb. It requires a little bit of steady patience and strategic, forward thinking, but if you firmly hold the line and leave the powder dry, it breaks the breeding cycle permanently. So let us transition and talk about exactly how you put this powerful knowledge to work in your own home today. Having the right tool in your hand is only half the battle. Knowing exactly how to wield it with the steady, practiced hand of a craftsman is the other half. The absolute biggest mistake I see well-meaning folks make, the surest way to fail entirely with diatomaceous earth, is to take that heavy bag and pour thick, heavy, solid white lines of powder all around the edges of their baseboards, making the room look like a winter snowstorm just blew straight through the living room. Remember the simple physical truth we discussed earlier. To a crawling bug, this powder is a dangerous field of broken glass. If you build a massive, highly visible mountain of sharp glass right in the middle of their usual walking path, what do you honestly think they're going to do? They are simply going to turn right around, find another route, and walk right around your trap. Insects are driven by very basic, highly effective survival instincts. They will naturally avoid an obvious, massive physical obstacle. Your ultimate goal is to be completely invisible to them. You want to create a silent trap they do not even realize they are walking into until it is far too late to turn back. The application must be incredibly thin and remarkably light. You're looking for a fine, barely visible dusting, just a faint ghost of a shadow lying quietly on the floorboards. Now, you do not need to go out and spend $20 buying a fancy, expensive brass powder duster from a specialized gardening catalog. Remember our guiding rule. We do not waste our money on things we do not strictly need. If you have an empty plastic ketchup bottle, or perhaps an empty yellow mustard bottle from the refrigerator that you have washed out thoroughly with soap and dried completely until there is no moisture left inside, you already have the absolute perfect tool. You fill that plastic bottle about halfway up with your soft food-grade powder, you aim the nozzle, and you give it a gentle, quick squeeze. The rush of air will puff out a beautiful, fine, floating cloud of dust that settles perfectly into the absolute tightest cracks and deepest crevices where bugs actually hide. Think carefully about where the bugs travel when the lights go out. They do not walk out boldly in the wide open spaces of your floors. They tightly hug the safe perimeters. You want to puff that very light dusting right along the dark seams of your baseboards, deep under the heavy kitchen appliances like the refrigerator, the dishwasher, and the stove where the motor keeps things constantly dark and warm. Puff a little bit, straight into the metal hinges of your lower kitchen cabinets, and gently work it around your exterior wooden door frames, where ants love to march inside. If you are dealing with the nightmare of bed bugs, specifically, you want to take a small, completely dry paintbrush and literally paint a fine, invisible dusting of this powder right into the folded seams of your mattress, along the connecting wooden joints of the bed frame and deeply inside the dark, hollow spaces of the box spring. You do that carefully one time, you leave it completely undisturbed, and you have just built a permanent lethal fortress right where you sleep every night. They will try to crawl up the frame to find you, they will cross the dust, and they will dehydrate before they ever get the chance to bite. Outdoors, around the working homestead, the practical applications are just as vital. If you keep a flock of laying chickens, you already know the absolute nightmare that red mites can bring to a coop. They drain the birds, drop egg production, and make the hens miserable. Instead of spraying toxic, wet chemicals inside the wooden coop where your sensitive hens sleep and lay the very eggs you're going to feed your growing grandchildren, you simply dust the wooden nesting boxes and the wooden roosting bars with a fine layer of dry diatomaceous earth. The hens will even naturally do the work for you. When they take their daily dust baths in the dirt, if you mix a little powder into their favorite bathing spot, they will roll in it, aggressively working the sharp silica deep under their own feathers to physically kill the mites right on their bare skin. You can brush it lightly into the dark corners of the wooden doghouse, or completely around the outside perimeter of the rabbit hutches to stop creeping ticks and fleas. It brilliantly protects your valuable animals without ever exposing their sensitive lungs or skin to a single drop of synthetic corporate poison. And here is a profound piece of old-fashioned homesteading wisdom that most modern, grocery store-dependent households have completely forgotten. This is a quiet survival secret that folks in my community have used for many generations to confidently survive the long, harsh, freezing winters without losing their essential, hard-grown food supplies. If you store bulk dry pantry staples in your basement, your root cellar, or your dark pantry shelves, things like heavy bags of dried pinto beans, hard winter wheat berries, a whole kernel corn, or rolled oats, you know that tiny grain weevils and pantry beetles can completely destroy an entire year's worth of stored food in a matter of a few short weeks. Instead of nervously treating your wooden storage bins with dangerous chemical fumigants, you can directly mix food-grade diatomaceous earth right into your stored human food. The traditional proven ratio is roughly 1 single cup of the dry powder mixed thoroughly into 50 pounds of stored grain. That fine soft dust lightly coats every single kernel of wheat or piece of corn. The exact moment a tiny weevil larva hatches from an egg hidden inside the grain and tries to take a bite out of that wheat berry, its soft body gets sliced by the microscopic silica, it immediately dehydrates, and it dies before it can ever reproduce. Your vital food supply remains completely, perfectly safe. There is zero chemical contamination. When the hard winter comes and you are ready to mill that wheat into flour or cook a pot of those dried beans, you can either give them a very quick rinse in the kitchen sink water, or frankly, you can just leave the dust right there. It is completely food grade, it is just natural minerals, and it will not hurt your stomach one bit. That is exactly how you protect your hard-earned harvest, the honest, self-reliant way. So, here is your practical homework for this week. I do not just want you to sit there, watch this glowing screen, nod your head in agreement, and then go right back to paying the chemical exterminator. I want you to take definitive action today and firmly take back control of your own household. I want you to get in your truck or your car, go down to your local farm supply store, your local feed mill, your neighborhood garden center, or even look online if you absolutely have to. And I want you to buy 1 small bag of food-grade diatomaceous earth. It will very likely cost you less than what you would carelessly pay for a single small cup of coffee at one of those fancy, noisy cafes out in the city. Bring that plain bag home, find that one specific spot in the kitchen where the scout ants always seem to find their way inside after a heavy rain, or that dark corner of the back porch where the fleas are constantly bothering the poor dog, and patiently lay down that fine, invisible dusting, just exactly like we talked about today. Give it a few quiet days to do its relentless mechanical work. Once you see the undeniable results for yourself with your own 2 eyes, once you finally realize that you just permanently solved your pest problem for mere pennies on the dollar, without ever calling a massive corporation for their expensive help, I want you to come right back here to this specific video. Scroll down, leave me a detailed comment, and tell me exactly how it worked for you. Tell me what kind of stubborn bugs you finally defeated, and tell me exactly how much hard-earned money you saved your family by boldly canceling that expensive exterminator contract. I sit out on my wooden porch every single evening when the daylight fades and the heavy farm chores are finally done, and I read every single comment you folks leave for me. Your personal stories truly matter, and your quiet household victories matter. Sharing this traditional, hard-won knowledge freely with each other is exactly how we build a strong, independent, capable community together. Knowledge like this does not just disappear on its own. It gets intentionally buried by the people making money off your ignorance. This channel digs it back up and hands it right back to you. Next week, we are going to tackle another incredibly frustrating problem that honest folks waste far too much money on every year. I'm going to show you exactly how to clear out a stubborn, thoroughly clogged drain pipe using very simple, basic items you already have sitting right now in your kitchen pantry, completely avoiding those heavily advertised, expensive, corrosive, heat-generating chemical gels that are slowly but surely eating away at your home's expensive plumbing pipes. You will certainly not want to miss that one. Do not let the men wearing the crisp suits and driving the branded trucks sell you the heavy, expensive chain of daily dependency. They want you feeling helpless, but you are absolutely not helpless. Remember the firm rule that the tough generations before us lived by every single day of their lives. Do not waste anything, especially not your hard-earned money and your precious peace of mind. Keep your hands just a little bit dirty. Keep your family and your animals completely safe from unnecessary toxins. And above all else, stay fiercely independent. Thank you kindly for sharing your valuable time with me today. Subscribe if this kind of truth matters to you, and I will see you in the next one.